Hey everybody, welcome to another Happy New Year episode of Phil and Mike. I, as always, am Darren Michael, and with me, the man who just got back from Cleveland after running there to give a PED test to Donovan Mitchell after he scored 71 points versus the Bills. Phil Cooley's. Phil, how are you, my friend?
I am fantastic, stupendous, spectacular. Happy New
You
Year to you.
you look like Happy New Year to you. Before we get into the holidays, I just wanted to ask you, the guy's a great player. He scores 71 points. You got to rush out there to make sure that he's not on performance enhancing drugs. What the hell is wrong with you?
Hey, I get the call. I show up. That's how we.
What
That's how
what
we roll.
what is this based on? The fact that he scored a bunch of points?
They buzz the bat phone. I got to go out there and give him a couple of jabs.
I
Bang
mean,
bang.
listen.
See what's going
I
on.
mean, listen.
Tea
In
in a
my
cup.
in my 5 seasons of playing over 40 men's basketball, I've scored more than 71 points. Are you going to come and give me a PDA test next?
No, we confidently feel like you're not on the roids. We feel confident about that. But listen, I don't want to break news on the podcast, but allegedly Donovan Mitchell may be pregnant, so we may have a problem.
He's taking estrogen pills. It's very odd. It's very odd. Yeah. So man, how was your holidays?
They were good.
Yeah.
They were good overall. I mean, I had a couple of weeks off from work, so that was nice. We got some fun stuff in. And then kids got a little sick, so then there was that. We kind of dodged a bullet though. They weren't sick for too long. Only a few of them got it, so not
Well,
too bad. My wife and I stayed healthy, which was
Well,
good.
as soon as I was in New Jersey, and
I know.
as soon as you told me that there was some illness in the family, Tricia says to me, she just looks at me and goes, "No,
I
not
know. I
going,
was gonna say I didn't know if you were gonna admit that, but I was gonna say we know who wears the pants in the
not
family, the Michael
happening,
family, because
not happening. I'm going to be in a car with you for 12 hours. Not happening."
Darren was not allowed to hang out with me, and
I said I haven't seen my boy in it's been years now. We haven't
yeah,
seen each other since before we started the podcast.
we haven't seen each other since pre-COVID,
Yeah, since pre-COVID. So
since the world became weird.
and the interesting thing is not to really go off on a tangent, but I hear that there's a new strand that's going to be decimating this country. Not deaths, but everybody looks like it's going to get. I was reading that in Shanghai, which has 25 million people, they estimate 70% of them have COVID right now.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, we wouldn't announce that people had the sniffles, so can we just move on?
Listen,
Like
that's what I say. That's what I say.
99% of people feel better inside of 48 hours. I
But
don't announce every time I got diarrhea because I got a viral. Like, can we move on, people? All right, 3 years later, we haven't moved on.
but I've been tracking your diarrhea. It looks like you had your last one. I know.
It's just we have to move past this. I actually saw, it's funny that you brought that up. I actually saw a tweet maybe a month ago, and I just had to laugh out loud. A tweet from Mike Greenberg, of the old Mike and Mike show, and now he does whatever first take, not first take, whatever that morning show is on ESPN. And
Yep.
he announced he was gonna miss the next 3 to 4 shows, but don't worry, guys, he just has flu A. Like, what world did we get to when somebody's out of work and they tell you what they have? Like, eh, it's like, okay, Mike, you're off a couple days. Good, feel
That's
better.
that's the way it is.
I
But
didn't know Mike Greenberg has flu A. Don't worry, I don't have COVID. Okay, you'd probably be better off if you had COVID than flu A, because flu A could be a pain and could last
well,
like a good week, week and a half.
here's my question though. Here's my question. As a society, have we learned from the COVID mistakes of the past? Or are we going to go back to, is it good? I mean, listen, LA is going to be masking up. Seattle's going to be masking up.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for New York. I mean, is that what's going to happen? I mean, are the kids going to be out of school again? Is it going to be mask requirements all over the
I don't
place?
think so because I feel like I don't think so. I don't think
I
that's gonna
hope not.
fly. I don't think it's gonna fly again in 90% of the country. I think in the places that are the most likely to have it happen, you can already see there's still pretty substantial pushback.
Yeah.
So like I think it'll only be in the very, very, very fringe that you'll see it still pop up. Matter of fact, there's actually a school system in New Jersey where they're requiring masks for like the next 6 weeks after the holidays. But it's in like North Jersey, in a place you probably would guess it would probably be,
Yeah.
but not. I don't think it's going to permeate through the country. I think people are masked out after 2.5 years. And again, the beauty is nobody's telling you can't if that's what you feel like doing.
There's
No,
plenty of
I've
people
never
out
I've
there
never
that
seen
still
anybody
do it.
walking around in a mask that the police pull them over, rip the mask off, and throw them in the police car. So I think you can wear your mask if you feel comfortable. If you're driving on the Garden State Parkway alone in a car with a mask on, I'm gonna make fun of you. That's me. All right.
You know what?
That one I'm making fun of. Period.
I love. I love seeing, which I keep seeing all the place. The people that have the mask and then it's down just covering their chin.
Yeah, well, because you need chin protection.
Dude, that's where you're most vulnerable. Your
but
chin,
that's
what
you should wear it around your chin, then we won't see your ridiculous beard.
Tell me the truth.
That's actually for men that can't grow in proper beards. It's called the beard protector.
Yes, I know. And I'm not really growing a beard. It's just I like to just keep the scruff, but it's a little bit longer than I'm used to. You stopped shaving 2 days ago.
You're not full Abe Lincoln. I understand. You're not full Abe.
There's some up here. It's not.
No, I said you're not full Abe Lincoln. Yeah.
Listen,
you don't look like a 17-year-old. I mean, that's cool.
Well, thank God. I prefer this podcast when you are cleanly shaven. And I'm not talking about
that never happens.
I know, but I that's what I prefer. Anyway, listen, we got so much to get to. We've got to dive in. Because let's be honest, okay? College football playoffs. Oh my friggin' Lord. Wow.
Dude, we didn't pick them because we didn't get together before the holiday. I know we didn't do a podcast in time for the playoffs, so we didn't pick them.
I mean, let's talk about a couple of these things really quickly.
It's the best combo semifinal of all time. And by the way, because the semifinals have been stinkers a lot. And maybe you get one good game, you never get two. But it wasn't just it's probably going to be the best semifinal combo for the next decade. It's hard to match that one.
You would think so, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of get into these games a little bit. I mean, you got the Fiesta Bowl, right? So TCU.
Can we not call it the Fiesta Bowl and whatever the bowl name is? It's the playoff. I hate that. I've heard people say TCU won the Fiesta Bowl, or was it the Fiesta Bowl? Yeah, TCU won the Fiesta Bowl. No, TCU won the semifinal playoff game. Nobody cares it was at the Fiesta Bowl.
It is called the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Okay, I don't like it. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. If it's a bowl, then there's more money attached to it.
This is half my podcast. I don't like it. I stand up and
That's it. You're done talking. All right, well, anyway, okay, fine. So let me put it this way, right? So TCU 51, Michigan 45 in the Fiesta Bowl. The interesting thing about this was that Michigan was down 21-6 at half, and these two teams basically they went into their locker rooms, and the coaches said to each of them, "Listen, guys, we're tired of this defense crap. Let's just throw some offense out there and just score as much as possible." So after scoring a combined 27 points in the first half, they scored 69 in the second half. My God. So here's my question to you, and it was a phenomenal game. Tell me your interpretation of this game, and do you think that TCU has showed us that they actually have a legitimate chance of being a national champion?
I want to be fair to TCU, and I want to also not. So I want to be fair to TCU. They deserve a ton of credit. They played a really good game. Listen, it is very rare to throw 2 pick sixes or to be on the scoring end of 2 pick sixes and lose that game.
That's true.
Now, funny enough, as a Notre Dame fan, South Carolina had 2 pick sixes against Notre Dame and still lost. Yep. So it's possible that you can end up with 2 defensive touchdowns and lose a game, but it is usually very unlikely. So TCU should have won the game.
Yep.
With what occurred.
Yep.
I think a couple of things were contradictory in the game and in the landscape of college football this year. TCU was not actually very dominant in the Big 12 all year. Like, they got to the Big 12 game undefeated and lost to Kansas State, who got crushed to Alabama. But like, TCU wasn't dominant all year.
No.
But they did find a way to win every week. And usually those teams, to be fair, don't show up great in the playoff.
That's true.
But something unique happened, a gift from the gods for TCU. They got to play Michigan in the playoff. And here's the deal. That's the weakest matchup of all time in the playoff. Because Michigan was a paper champion. Michigan had one good win on their resume. The last game of the year against Ohio State, where they really beat them down physically.
Yep.
And had a great win, but they played a cupcake out of conference schedule. They weren't tested all year. True. And they did beat Ohio State in a one moment scenario where they basically cakewalked to that game in November and got there and did really well in that game.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly think Michigan was this juggernaut that people were pretending they were. I just didn't, because the Big Ten was weak.
Yep.
And Michigan didn't play anybody.
Yeah.
So I stunned. I actually, if we were picking the game in time, I would have taken the plus 7.5. That's what the
Yeah.
spread was. TCU was
Yeah.
getting 7.5.
Yeah.
I would have taken TCU, but I probably would have said Michigan will win a close, ugly game. That would have been kind of my quick synopsis. Um, but I'm not shocked TCU won the game. I, I again, two weak teams met in the playoff, and TCU won the game, and kudos to them. I don't think TCU can beat Georgia. No, I don't. I don't see it. No, I don't think so. And I don't think that's a fair. I don't think that's even fair. They're not going to match up well with Georgia. No, I don't think so.
All right, fair enough.
But Michigan is going to look back at this as a giant missed opportunity.
Oh, huge missed
because they needed, after losing last year to Georgia in the semifinal, they needed to win a game. I always think about this as a Notre Dame fan. Notre Dame's made the playoff twice, and they had to run into juggernaut Clemson, who went 15-0, and juggernaut Alabama, who went 15-0 those years. Michigan got a gift. They got 12-1 TCU, and they lost to them.
Yeah.
And so they're going to look back as a major missed opportunity to at least get to the title game.
It's true. It's true. But on a positive note for Michigan, they did beat Ohio State for the second year in a row. And that's in the scheme of things.
Good.
That's truly all that matters for Michigan football.
Well, this beat Ohio State. So I don't think there's one Michigan fan, and everybody's fan base is a little delusional. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I can say that confidently. I think I tend to be a logical Notre Dame fan, but I think it's because I'm removed from like the South Bend area.
Yeah.
And although Notre Dame's so national, I don't know. But I do think Michigan fans, I think, feel like this season now is a failure, though. Because of the opponent they met up with, I think the win over Ohio State has basically been given back by the loss to TCU this year. Last year, I think they accepted. Beat Ohio State for the first time in forever, lose to an unbelievable Georgia team. They could live with that.
Yeah.
This year, back-to-back years, same team returned basically. I know they lost some defensive players, but the core of the offense returned. They were battle tested now. They've been to a playoff. Now they have a good winnable opponent, and they're a fairly heavy favorite.
Yeah.
They lose. I think this one doesn't hold as well. They don't get to go home that day and go, "Oh, great season." I don't think so this time.
Well, it was interesting, but just as interesting and probably even a better game was the Peach Bowl.
Better game. Agree. The Peach Bowl. We're going to call it the Peach Bowl, not the playoff. Got it. Okay.
That's right. The other playoff game, which is referred to as the Peach Bowl because it's played in Georgia's backyard in Atlanta.
Would have been a bad loss for Georgia to lose at home.
Right. So you got.
Let's face it, they were home.
It was a home game. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. So they win 42-41 over an OSU team that nobody thought was really great, and they just got destroyed by Michigan. So the expectations, I think, weren't very high, but they played a great game. UGA was down 38-24 after 3 quarters. People don't really think about that. And
I do. They were getting blasted.
Oh yeah, and then what did they do? They scored 18 points to Ohio State's 3 in the fourth quarter. They score a late touchdown, and then what does Ohio State do? They ride CJ Stroud's back, his coattails. They get into field goal range with no time on the clock. As the clock is striking 12, the new year is coming in.
Pretty cool.
He goes
Pretty
up.
Cool if you're a Georgia fan.
I know. He goes up for the kick. All the Georgia fans are holding their breath. I was at a party, and they were all Georgia fans. I kept yelling out for Ohio State, and I thought I was going to get my ass kicked. But anyway, that 50-yard field goal attempt, I mean, if this is the goalpost, the ball went like this.
No, it was the most anticlimactic game-winning attempt because from moment it left said foot, ball was 25 yards left.
And you know what? Aubrey's watching the game with me, and she's like, "Dad, what the heck was that?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe he didn't realize that he was in a dome, and he thought there was a ton of wind. So if he kicks it really far to the left, it'll just curve over."
I feel bad because they're kids. The kickers they're kids. It's not the NFL. They're not millionaires. So I feel bad for the guy.
Well, some of them are millionaires, but
not the kickers.
That's right. It's a lot of pressure. I mean, if he had made that kick, he would have gone down as one of the greatest players in Ohio State football history.
Also, we've been skewed by the fact that 50-yard field goals are just made routinely. It was a 50-yard field goal. He didn't shank a 33-yarder.
That's true.
He missed a 50-yarder. And by the way, most people don't watch football the way I do and pay attention to every detail. I knew he had no shot at that field goal because if you watched not long before that, when he kicked his last field goal of 47 yards, it barely made it over the crossbar. So he didn't have a gigantic leg, which means he had to put everything into that kick, which is why he missed it so badly left, because most kickers, when they line up for a 50-yard field goal nowadays, particularly in a dome, they're just trying to make sure they have the kick they want for accuracy. This kid clearly needed to put everything into the kick to reach. And that is a very different field goal attempt, because from 47, he may have had distance by 2 yards, not long earlier in the game. It wobbled over the crossbar. It wasn't a great kick. So he didn't have a big leg. He was accurate. He was a good kicker, but he didn't have a big leg. Like our jet kicker, Greg the Leg Zerline, who from 67 hits the back of the net. And you're like, okay, that dude never has to think about when he kicks it if it's going to reach. He just has to be accurate.
You know what I think people don't think about when it comes to kicking. You know, I mean, listen, we've all kicked a football or kicked a soccer ball, whatever, and we've seen how difficult it is. But when you think about it, right, you're lined up 21 feet behind the line of scrimmage. All right, so you've got guys that are pushing in. So let's say that comes down to more like 18 feet. And then they're jumping in the air. And let's say some of these guys can jump high, and you're talking about 11 feet. So you're talking about, let's say 18 feet and then 11 feet up. And you've got to kick the ball 50 yards, and you've got 18 feet.
Got to have good trajectory right off the
11 feet.
Yeah. Well, you see a lot of long kicks. And before the kickers were so prolific at kicking from long range, we grew up in an era where kicks from 50 were routinely blocked.
Yeah,
because they had to keep them low to reach.
That's exactly
and so
right.
You used to see blocked kicks so much more often. Now the only time you see a block kick is just from the ends, because somebody comes a missed assignment, they come around the end and they block it. But straight up over the top is rare, because these kickers have such big legs. They could still kick it high and still easily get 50 plus yards. But I do want to highlight 3 things about that game.
Yeah.
One, Ohio State was the epitome of a dangerous opponent, meaning they're a top 4 talented team.
Yeah.
They had the best possible scenario occur. They get housed by their rival. They get to sit back the next week. They get to sneak into the playoff. They were left for dead 5 seconds after they lost to Michigan. They were embarrassed. They were beaten down. The media destroyed them. I'm sure their own fan base kind of was like, it's over. Most of those kids obviously thought they weren't making the playoff. A week later, they get the reprieve of their lives. Now they're just dangerous, because now they get a second chance at winning a championship. And now you just get the 5-star talent that they have, which they can match up with Georgia. They got plenty of 5-stars on there. We talk about it all the time. Ohio State can go toe-to-toe with Alabama and Georgia, and I say that confidently because I've watched it. They've beaten Alabama. They've beaten everybody you can beat. They got 5-star kids, and they have a top 5 NFL draft pick quarterback. They got all the recipe to beat anybody. So I wasn't surprised at all that they played that game. I actually was surprised as the game unfolded, they blew the game at that point, because they had a 14-point lead. What I was stunned by, and why I think Ryan Day is a crappy coach, because he is littered with 5-star recruits, is he settled for that 50-yard field goal. He didn't. I don't understand how CJ Stroud got down there on that run play. Actually, basically, the whole drive was 2 CJ Stroud runs, I believe.
Yeah.
He gets down to like the 28-yard line with like 40, 50 seconds to go. In my head, I'm going, does Georgia just like let them score now and try to like almost let them score in essence, because they know Ohio State's going to get 10 yards closer? I'm thinking they're going to be kicking like a 35, 40-yard field goal at this point. They run a play, they lose a couple yards, and they had no urgency. They actually were thinking about killing clock because they didn't want to give Georgia the ball back. They had like no urgency, and then they just like try to run deeper pass plays, and they get flushed out of the pocket, and he's got to throw the ball away to avoid a sack. But they didn't play that game like, hey, 32, 33, being at the 32 or 33, this is a deep field goal. Did they not watch the kid just make it over the crossbar from 48? I don't understand why Ryan Day played it that way. They needed to get to like the 20, 25 to give the kid in that moment a really good chance to make a kick. Instead, they gave him like a 50-50 shot, and they settled for that. They didn't need to. I was blown away by that. If they would have just taken CJ Stroud and just ran right twice in a row. If they would have snuck twice in a row, they'd have been better off. I have no idea what they were thinking. And they deserved to lose. They played like an idiot at the end.
No, you're right. You're right. And you know what? I think we see it far too often that teams are settling for these long. Oh, we're in field goal range. Okay, good. Now we can just run some clock.
You're at the edge of field goal
extra
range.
Yards.
They were at the edge of field goal range. They weren't in comfortable territory. And it's a kid. It's not an NFL $8 million paid kicker. Yes, they're indoors, which helps because distance usually isn't an issue. But again, proper perspective. The kid had just barely made it over the crossbar from 47 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So what that he didn't shank it. That's his leg. He reaches from about 50 is probably his length. That's it. So you're making him line up for a 50-yard field goal to win a game, which is a 50-50 at best proposition. And clearly based on that kick, I would argue with anyone. He missed it that badly because he was worried about reaching.
Of course.
Because you don't miss that badly unless you have a distance concern. Because if not, they're all accurate. They all can put the ball between the crossbars. He was so worried about reaching that he shanked it terribly.
Yeah, that's
on the coach to me, not the kicker. To me,
I totally agree. Now the thing is, I mean, to me, when I look at this game, you look at the score and you say, okay, wow, UGA came back. They barely eked this one out. They were down by 2 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter. But if you look at how they played when they needed to, this team can do some damage. And I look at the UGA TCU matchup, and I think it's going to be a closer game. I mean, the spread is 12.5. I don't think so. I think it's going to be. I think TCU is going to cover. I think it's going to be a better game than you think. You tend to be different than me, but that's what I'm saying. And I'm putting my money on that game. I'm putting my money on TCU this week.
I think TCU is going to be this matchup is going to be the classic happy to be there versus team that expects to win a championship. TCU got their big win that they probably didn't expect to get, but definitely had a chance to get.
Yeah.
A reasonable opponent that they could beat. Now they're in the deepest waters off of a big win in which they weren't expected to get.
Yeah.
But definitely earned it, but was a game they could win.
Yeah.
Now I think they go and they get blitzed. Now I think this is just a bad game. And I think the blueprint's going to be this quarterback's not super mobile. I think Georgia's going to feel this out in the first 5 minutes. If they can get pressure without bringing people, they'll destroy them. If they can't get pressure right away without bringing people, like they couldn't against Ohio State, they had to bring people. But when they did decide to bring people, they started making some havoc for Stroud. If they can bring people, if they need to bring people, this kid's done. He's going to get lit up. It's going to be ugly. My prediction for this game is it's pretty ugly. Like you got 2 of the greatest semifinal games, which is going to crash into a really bad championship game. Like 34-10, 34-13, where you're going, oh, the football gods gave us 2 great semifinals. They had to take it away in the finals and get it. 30, I'll be generous to TCU. I'll land on 34-13 final.
See, I don't think so. I
know, but you'll be wrong and I'll be right. And you hate Georgia because you live there and don't like them. So you're skewed.
I definitely, I'm not.
They're like 50-2 in their last 52 games.
But I think, I know they're pretty good. I think it's
give me a score. Give me a score. Put your money where your mouth is. Give me a score. I'm always on the hook for predictions and scores. My resume is right here. It's all the predictions. It's all done. I put myself out there. What do you got?
I'm going to say...
I'm writing mine down, 34-13, just to make sure I'm accountable.
I'm going to say... Because
you're not picking TCU to win, right?
No. I'm going to pick... I'm going to say 41-34. Georgia.
Okay, Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, Georgia's cutting down the nets going college basketball. At the end of the day, Georgia's the confetti's raining black and red or whatever their colors are.
Yeah.
We're not in disagreement on that. You just have to be a closer game.
Yeah, I think it's UGA to repeat both ways. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Cotton Bowl, which I know has nothing to do with the national championship, but this was by the Cotton Bowl.
Which one? What game? Who was it? I don't know it by the name of the bowl. Who was that? USC Tulane.
USC Tulane. Yeah,
that's what I was trying to figure out.
Now the UGA OSU game was great. The TCU UM game was great. The Tulane USC game was even better. Let's be honest.
The
Okay.
green wave. Look out for the green wave,
I
baby.
mean, honestly, I didn't even know that the Green Wave had a sports program. I mean, that's how bad that they've been over the years. So they come in there, they're down on USC. They couldn't stop Caleb Williams all game. Caleb Williams, 37 for
Yep.
52, 462 yards and 5 touchdowns, right?
Yep.
So they get the ball down, they're inside the 10. The quarterback throws it, and the wide receiver makes this diving, juggling kind of catch. They reviewed it and they found that it was a catch. I think at first it was called incomplete, and
Yep.
they reviewed it. They found that it was a catch. Tulane wins the game 46-45. Their running back, 17 rushes, 205 yards, and 4 touchdowns. They score 16 points in the final 4 minutes to take this game. I mean, what a way to end a game where they call it incomplete and then they reverse the call and Tulane wins. And let's be honest, it was a catch. It was definitely a catch. I mean,
I
what the
agree.
hell is what is going on? USC, I mean, I understand that they lose to Utah and that knocks them out of the playoff. But my God,
No.
Tulane? Wow.
So the thing you have to understand about USC though is yes, he brought over a free agency team to take them from 7-5 to, on the precipice of a playoff this year. And he took the Heisman Trophy quarterback, which obviously is going to accelerate your performance. But if you take Caleb Williams off USC, they're a 7-5, 8-4 team. They
Yeah,
have no defense.
that's true.
They
That's
have
true.
no defense. They didn't do a great job bringing in transfer portal defenders. They brought in all offense. He went
Yep.
crazy offense, and he's got to
Yep.
work on the defense. The defense isn't prime time ready yet. They weren't totally exposed in the Pac-12 this year with it because they just kind of outlasted teams. But if you actually pull up some of USC scores, the Tulane game isn't as shocking if you pull up their scores. They
Yep.
gave up a lot of points to a lot of different teams and won a
Yep.
bunch of shootouts.
Yep.
So if you can't play defense at all, you could lose to anyone.
Makes it tough.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
and so good job for the Green Wave of Tulane, who were 4-8 last year, by the way. Pretty nice improvement to 11-2. Bet
Yeah.
you didn't know
Yeah.
I had that little nugget in my back pocket, but yes, four
That
and
was
eight to 11-2.
unbelievable coaching job. Unbelievable. I mean, it's Tulane for God's sakes, but pretty exciting. So excitement. We got our predictions out there for college football final.
Yep.
Let's get into a wild week of NFL. We're going
Wild,
into week
sad,
18. Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. We're gonna get to all that, but let's start off talking a little NFC. All right. So we've got the Packers who destroy the Vikings 41-17. Although let's be honest, Minnesota scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. Pack had lost 5 in a row earlier this season. We all thought they were out. Somehow Aaron Rodgers has roared them back. They've won 4 in a row, and they're in the middle of a playoff hopeful run. The Lions destroy the Bills 41-10. They go from 1-6 to 8-8, and the Seahawks beat the Jets 23-6. So we've got 3 teams that are fighting for one playoff spot. All right, here's what we got. If the Packers win versus the Lions, they make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If Detroit beats the Packers and Seattle loses to the Rams, they get in.
Yep.
Seattle must beat the Rams and the Packers must lose for them to get in.
Seattle must beat the Rams. Yes. And
yeah.
yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, what's going to happen here? Who do you think comes out of this thing? I mean, it's some crazy scenarios.
I don't think it's an easy game. And again, the Lions are one of those teams, if you look at it all year, when they're doubted, they're dangerous.
Yep.
The moment you say, ooh, Detroit's pretty good, they lay a stinker. That's what makes them Detroit. That's what makes them, as Jet fans, we can relate to them. We totally get it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're Detroit and you were 1-6 or whatever, and they were just completely doubted, and everybody's like, they're Detroit, they stink, and then they get hot, and then when the playoffs are still really far away, they kind of stay hot and they do a really good job.
Yep.
And then the moment they got to go to Carolina with everything in front of them, they get their butts whooped. And so like that's the epitome of Detroit. Then they come back and destroy the Bears because the season had just ended the week before, and now everybody says they stink again, and now they're like, oh, okay, we could be Detroit, we could win. That's like the legacy of bad franchises, right?
Yep.
They always do the opposite of what you think, which is why they're nightmares to pick against unless they're 2-14, because then they're just horrible.
True.
So do I think Detroit plays well this week? I actually do think they play well, and I'm not trying to be contradictory. I do think they play well. They beat Green Bay back in November at home. Now, a trip to Lambeau is a whole different ball of wax. I do think they'll play a good game. I don't think they'll beat Green Bay, though. So I think Green Bay will get in the playoffs. I think Aaron Rodgers can now taste it.
Yeah.
Green Bay's been red hot.
Yeah.
And it just would be the world is wacky, right?
Yeah.
We do live in probably the wackiest time to be alive in forever. But something would have to be so crazy to me that if you told me Aaron Rodgers is going to be denied a playoff berth at home by Detroit, I just can't buy it.
It doesn't.
I just can't buy it. But I do think they'll give him a good scare.
Okay. So then it wouldn't even make a difference if Seattle beats the Rams, which
no. And Seattle's got themselves to Seattle collapsed for a long while.
They had and
their only win is against the even worse collapsed Jets. So like they haven't beaten anybody except the Jets, who look like they showed up like an 8th grade team that got their first plane. They got on their first plane and was just so excited to walk into a stadium. They never played football before. So
all right. Well, now that was a little more straightforward. Let's talk about the AFC wildcard. And we've got the Pats, the Finns, and the Pittsburgh Steelers vying for the last spot. So let's start with the Pats.
Winning in, right?
If they beat the Bills, they get in. Or they get in if Miami loses to the Jets and Pittsburgh loses to Cleveland.
Yep.
So
who wins between Pitt and Miami? How does that work?
Pitt is in with a win at the Browns, a loss by the Dolphins, and a loss.
So they're the one that needs all the help. They need both losses and a win.
They need all the help, right? And then you've got the Dolphins in with a win versus the Jets and a Patriots loss. So
and there's a weird outside possibility I read somewhere, but don't have the details, where the Jags could lose to the Titans win the division, but the Jags are still alive for a wild card, right?
No,
there's a weird one. I think all those teams would have to lose. Yeah, the Jags can make a wild card if those 3 teams you named lose. The Jags are the wild card team.
It could happen.
It's crazy weird, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even really put that into a scenario.
I know all of them, all the Pittsburgh, the Dolphins, and the Pats. If they all lose, the Jags losing Saturday night to the Titans, because that's really for the AFC South. The Jags would then sneak back in and make the last wild card.
Yeah. I don't see that happening though.
No, probably not.
All 4 teams losing. First off, I think the Jags are going to win. They're just playing really, really well.
Yeah, and they're playing a backup, 3rd string or 2nd string quarterback.
But when you look at this, the Pats, the Dolphins, and Pittsburgh, you got to give the advantage to the Dolphins here. I would think, right? I mean, Patriots have.
So I have to remove the Bills and their mindset, and we'll get into the Damar Hamlin stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Bills' mindset's going to be this coming weekend. That's a funky situation. They could rally behind it, obviously, and just beat the doors off the Pats, or they could just still be like, this was the weirdest week of all time, and they don't play a very good game. Yep. I would not. So if we're talking about purely betting, that's a game I'm staying away from, because I don't even know the mindset of that team.
It's a tough one.
So if I remove that for a second, which is hard to do because it requires, if the Pats win, they're in. I do like the idea. I would say this. If that moment never happened last Monday night, I feel like the Pats had no chance to beat Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like if they were just showing up to play a normal Buffalo team with Buffalo playing for the 1 seed, there's no shot the Pats win. Now, because it's so weird, they might win the game. Anything's possible. But to get to your point of like the best chance to get in being the Dolphins, because you're basically just targeting the Jets stink. And if the Pats lose, which you're basically saying will probably happen, the Dolphins control their own fate. All they got to do is beat the worthless Jets and they're in. I would say the same way the Packers are like a prestigious, pristine franchise, so are the Steelers.
Yeah.
The Steelers will be in the playoffs. That's who's making it.
You really think so?
Yes, because the football gods always reward the franchises that are the blue chip franchises.
I mean,
it's a storybook story. The Steelers 5 weeks ago were whatever they were, horrible. Mike Tomlin was going to have his first losing season ever. They're the worst thing ever. And they haven't lost in like a month and a half. They've had screwy things happen to win games. And so what more screwy, not really super screwy, but what more than the Steelers getting the perfect, right? Here's the perfect scenario though. Like let's seriously say it. How often does a team get to go into the last week of the season where they need multiple teams to lose to get in, And both of those teams, one is a prohibitive underdog. The Pats are still a prohibitive underdog to the Bills.
Yep.
And the Dolphins are on their third string quarterback.
Well,
so that's why the Steelers will get it.
The interesting thing when you talk about that, and I'm just looking at some stuff right now. I mean, remember
the Jets might even be favored in the game.
Listen, remember how hot the Dolphins were. At one point,
yeah, they were like Tua was the MVP, and the Dolphins are going to win the division.
They were 8-3.
Yeah,
they've lost their last 5 games.
They're trash. They're a trash can.
Yeah. So the only good thing that they have going for them, I mean, yeah, they're Skylar Thompson, their 7th round pick from this year out of Kansas State he's getting all the first team reps, so it looks like he's going to be starting.
Well, and he's actually played this year, so he's not like he hasn't played. He's actually played games because Tua got hurt, Bridgewater's been hurt, so he's got a little bit of reps.
He's got, he had. I don't want to say he's got a lot of reps. I can't even see it here, but yeah, he played last game. So I mean, the guy definitely has some experience. So maybe it's the first starting game thing that that I always like to talk about, but. You know what?
It's not. Just so you know, Skylar Thompson started against the Jets. The Jets beat them 40-17.
He did start that game. You're kidding.
Yeah, they both those guys were hurt. Tua had just come off his brutal concussion, and Bridgewater got hurt later in that game. So this matchup has literally happened already this year. And I'm not saying the Jets were in a much better place at the time. Although not a great place. The Jets winning against the Dolphins made them go to 3-2. This wasn't like the Jets at their best. This was the Jets just starting to play good ball. And the Jets are playing. The Jets are a dumpster fire now. Well, I understand that. But the Jets always win games when they mess up their draft pick status. This is their time.
It's definitely true. It's definitely true. So you look at this game, and you've got 2 teams that have lost 5 games in a row each.
Yeah.
I mean, this should be a crap game. But you know what? The more that we talk about this, the more that
the Jets are winning this game, dude. You could take this to the bank. It hurts their draft status. So right there are prohibitive odds go up of winning this game.
Now watch,
they're facing a third string quarterback who they beat earlier in the year, and they also have no pressure. Like, again, bad franchises when they have no pressure do better. If you flip this game and you had told me the Jets are playing a third string Dolphin team, but they control their own fate, I'd love the Dolphins this week.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing also talking about how the Jets always mess things up is watch Mike White go out there and throw 3 touchdowns and 450 yards too. And then they go into the offseason thinking, wow, this quarterback is great.
Well, and I don't defend Mike White because I don't care about Mike White. I didn't jump on his bandwagon like he's the greatest thing because he had a couple of good games. But I will say this, most people believed he wasn't healthy last week.
No, that's true.
Badly bruised ribs, like 2 dislocated ribs or whatever it is. Like, he just got cleared and they were desperate to put him out there. But if you watched how he made some of his throws, he made throws like, I don't want to get hit.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt.
So I don't think he was healthy, in fairness to the guy, but I do think his performance was so bad, and the Jets have to make tough decisions, that he probably is on the verge of not being considered to be brought back.
No.
But I don't think it's all on him. I think he actually is still hurt.
There's no doubt. All right, let's move on. Number 3.
So I got the Steelers. Packers and Steelers making the
Packers and Steelers. Okay. All right, I got that down. Is TB12 Magic back? They beat the Carolina Panthers 30-24.
They beat a team that has the roster of a 2-win team.
All right.
And they did it terribly, struggled terribly. No.
I'm not arguing with you. Tom Brady, 34 for 45, 432 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Is Tom Brady coming alive at the right time? And can this team actually finally put something together and make some noise in the playoffs?
No, but you know how ridiculous it is that they just got their 8th win and they get to rest everyone this week for the playoffs.
Yeah, I know. It's so absurd.
That does happen to Tom Brady. Again, the football gods always reward excellence. And so he's being rewarded for being mediocre all year with basically a built-in last week of the year bye.
It's true.
Crazy. This is how the NFL works. The NFL is it's so rewarding to the better teams and franchises.
Yeah.
Like, it just does. It always works that way.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Number 4, and I think this one is kind of interesting. So the Eagles, after starting off 13-1, have lost 2 in a row with Mustache as the quarterback, right? They lose to the great, incredibly talented New Orleans Saints 20-10. So my question is this. Hurts is not going to win the MVP this year because there's some other great performances. But do you think that he is the most important player in the league? When it comes to your team, is he the most important player?
Again, I mean, if you took Joe Burrow off the Bengals, they're dog doo. If you took Josh Allen off the Bills, they're not good. If you took like the great quarterbacks are just so valuable that it's hard to like separate them to me. Like you're trying to tell me like that Tampa Bay, no, that's not a good example. Because I was gonna say that Tampa Bay Bucks team's a 2-win team the way they played this year without Brady, but he wasn't great either, so I don't want to put him in that category. But no, I mean you see it all around. No, Jalen. But what I do think is that Jalen Hurts plays a particularly unique style of football.
Yeah.
That the team did a really good job around him in terms of like they have some real deep home run hitters. He can buy time. He's a nightmare with his legs.
Yeah.
And there's some things he can hide and some things he can help accelerate in terms of their offense that like a Gardner Minshew can't do. So in short spans where they're just putting a Band-Aid on it, they're not going to look like the same team. And they're not, by the way. Jalen Hurts is much better than Gardner Minshew. But are you trying to tell me if Gardner Minshew inherited the Buffalo Bills team, they'd win any games? Because they'd probably lose the same amount of games.
Listen,
too.
I don't know that answer, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, with Hurts, they were 13-1.
Yeah.
And
now they lost 2 games. I understand. But if Josh Allen was 13-1 on the Eagles as the quarterback and they went to Gardner Minshew, they'd lose 2 games. I just think the top 4 or 5 guys
but he's not.
are that valuable.
But he's not. I'm talking about this year. I personally think that he is the most important player in the league to his team this season. That's my personal thought.
My most important player every single year on a team until otherwise noted is Derrick Henry on the Titans. They literally have nobody else.
Yeah,
and they win 8 games a year. That's the most important player to the NFL. To me, one player, take them off a team and they're absolutely useless. That's the team. To me, if I'm saying number 1, then everybody else is a close second.
All right. Fair enough.
That's my thought.
Fair enough.
And clearly Zach Wilson's third.
Question number 5. So the Washington, don't call me Redskins, lose to Cleveland. 24-10.
Franchises.
Eliminating them from the playoffs. Here's my question. Why did they go with Carson Wentz in a winnable game, a guy that hadn't played in 9 games with the playoffs on the line?
I have a very simple answer for you. It relates back to all of my answers on this podcast. They are a bad franchise. They do bad franchise things. If you look at the NFL that way, a lot of things make more sense. Why they did something that makes no sense is because that's how you become a bad franchise. You do lots of things that make no sense. That's just one in the long line of things that make no sense.
I mean, really? That makes
that's the answer.
No sense. I mean, I'm looking at that thing and I'm like,
especially when like middle of the year or whatever, they were talking about Taylor Heineke or whatever his name is, somebody they were going to keep long term.
Yeah.
Somehow he fell so out of grace that they went to the bullpen and brought in the old crafty righty, except the problem is he's not really crafty.
Or very good. But hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. Number 6. And this is the biggest story, obviously, of the week. The game ended. The Buffalo Cincinnati, which was supposed to be a really, really important game this season. Obviously Damar Hamlin. And I'm sure we've all seen it. He goes, he makes the tackle, he gets up, he pops right up, and then he falls over, and his heart stopped. He had to have CPR. His heart stopped. I heard in the ambulance too. So his heart stopped twice. He had a heart attack. And this is a guy that, nobody's really heard of him, but from what I understand, he's just an unbelievably good guy. He does a lot of great things in the community. He's got like a kid's toy drive that, he's got a GoFundMe page that's been up for the toy drive, and all of a sudden he's gotten over $5 million in donations. I mean, it's unbelievably awful what happened. And 24 years old, obviously peak physical condition, and they're going to find out why this happened. But the good news is it looks like he's getting better. Yeah. I don't know what this is going to mean to his future, but he's alive, and it looks like he's going to make a recovery. But, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I was asking him, I said, when you look at this, it wasn't like it was a crazy hard tackle or anything or something that you would have gotten injured with. It could have been either a previous health condition that just happened to manifest itself at that moment.
Yeah.
It could have been a fluke where he just gets hit just a certain way at a certain time, and it just affects him in that way. But then I even heard a third thing, and this was an interesting one. And I don't mean to put anything out there, but you hear a lot about people that have had some of these COVID vaccines that have, some of the younger men that have had heart challenges because of that. So I'm wondering if it has to do with that. So I mean, I think there's three viable things that might have happened.
And if it's the third thing, you'll never hear about it because too many people have had it, and it'll cause mass hysteria. I'm always, so like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but at the same time, I can't stand when people say it can't be something that they have literally no idea if it can be.
That's
Meaning this thing hasn't been in the market and people haven't injected it into themselves for 30 years to look back at the history of what the side effects are. So like, it's absolutely equally garbage as the total conspiracy theorist people, as the people that just shoot down the idea that something could be possible. They're both equally wrong to me. Like it's crazy. There are clearly people that have had, especially young, healthy men and women, but men more than women, I think. There's clearly stories and examples of people just dropping and having issues. And we know the myocarditis, or what is it?
Myocarditis, I think it is.
Myocarditis is real. It's been said. The Big Ten was about to cancel the entire football season, if you remember, because obviously information is so readily available that people forget things week to week. But Big Ten in 2020 was about to cancel having college football because they believed that COVID brought on myocarditis, right? And so they were so concerned for young men in their healthiest years that could be a side effect of catching COVID that they were going to ban college football that year. The flip side is, the irony is, it's now been proven that it has affected people who get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Which actually isn't really ironic. It actually kind of makes sense because the vaccine is putting something in your system that emulates giving you the antibodies to fight it off. So you're putting what you are scared of in your system, right? Like, that's the irony of how it works. So it's very reasonable to believe that this could be a possibility. Like, it may not be him that's why it happened, but it's very possible to believe why are there so many stories of young, healthy men having issues?
Well, you know what?
So,
I mean,
it's possible.
Listen, we don't want to go, we really don't want to go down this line.
I don't know the answer. I'm just saying it's possible.
It is. I mean, if you see this kind of stuff happening, and and maybe it's not as common as it could be, or or maybe it's less common. I don't know what the case is, but when you look at it, it seems like, I'm kind of nervous that this kind of thing is going to happen again.
I don't particularly understand, and we're this, to me, and that's why I have no problem talking about this right now, because this isn't political. It never was to me.
No, it's not at all.
It doesn't make sense that it would even be viewed as political. You're injecting something in your body. That should never have anything to do with politics. So I guess my simple thought is I would never, if I was guiding my children who are in very, teenagers or really young adults, I, based on everything I've seen for 3 years now, would say I would much rather my child catch COVID, which seems to be basically nothing to a reasonably healthy young person, than inject something in them that I just don't know what it is enough. Period. The end. I wouldn't even need to go into detail. It would be like, one thing is an unknown, and one thing I've seen, 10 trillion people get and be fine in 3 days. Again, if you're 70, 80 and unhealthy, or if you have pre-existing conditions, there's so many factors why you might want to get it. But I'm talking about a 20-year-old healthy person. We're talking about college and NFL players, the healthiest people literally on the planet.
Yeah.
We're talking about 250 pounds of muscle, healthy as an ox, work out every day. Other than making them do it, why do they need it? True. Other than just coming up arbitrarily and saying you have to do it, why do they need it? They're as healthy as an ox. And nobody's dropping dead at 20 years old from COVID. They're just not. If they were, trust me, you'd read about it every day.
Yeah.
If 20-year-olds were dropping dead from COVID, all you'd hear about is it. And we'd still be in lockdowns, by the way, if that was the case.
That's right.
So clearly that's not the case. So like to me, it's like a no-brainer. Nobody healthy should take it. Nobody 20, 30 years old that's healthy should take it. It doesn't make sense. You don't know enough about the side effects.
Well,
Period.
it's scary. That's what it comes
But
down
I
to.
will say, do we even know this guy? I guess he has been vaccinated, right? You had to have been vaccinated to play in the NFL.
I think you had to be.
You
Yeah.
had to at least have done it a few. I don't know if you had to continuously get the vaccine, but he
I don't
definitely
know.
had it.
I don't know
I
how
think
that
they all
works.
walked away from the continuous thing, right?
Yeah, it's
Like,
just whatever the case is, it's just scary when something like that happens for
sure.
whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable that he had a heart attack. His heart stopped twice. He stopped breathing. They had to give him CPR. They had
Imagine
to
being the
shock him.
first. Imagine being the first game Saturday at 4:30, the first football game that's going to happen after that happened because it happened on Monday night.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
no
yeah.
games have been played. So at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday Eastern time, the what game is it? The
Chiefs versus the
Chiefs Raiders are going to
at
step
the
on a
Raiders.
field, and the first hit. Imagine being like the shell shocked, like the players that have to now just hit again after seeing that.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, that's the first game that's going to happen since that happened.
Yeah.
Because there's been no college football game since that happened, right? Oh no, was there?
No,
No,
not since Monday night. No, I don't think so.
no, no,
Say
because the bowl games that happened after the New Year's Eve were the next day. No, no, the Monday night game was the last football game that's been played.
What
In
was the date on that? Fourth. No, that was the
1-3.
second. That was the second. There were game. I thought there were games played on the
No,
second.
the Bills. The
I thought there were college games played on the
Yes,
second.
there was, but they were played all day long. That happened late at night.
This was the night one. Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
the last game that's been played. Nobody's tackled each other since. I mean, in a game.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy to think about, but oh well, we'll see. Well, let's move on. We hope for the best. It sounds like this guy's moving in the right direction. He's not out of the woods,
Yeah, absolutely.
but you know what? I mean, obviously he's really healthy, so I'm sure his body is able to fight this better than a lot of people out there. So let's just hope for the best. Let's get into Phil's game ball. All right, and
Let's do it.
there were some really great performances last week. I want to start with you might not think much about him, you might not think much about the Bucks, but Tom Brady played a hell of a game, especially for a guy that's 45 years old. 34 for 45, 432 yards, 3 touchdowns in a huge 30-24 win over Carolina. Now, the interesting thing about this is because he doesn't have enough records to his name. He set a record by having his 5th straight game of 30 plus completions and his 10th game of 30 completions this year. It's unbelievable what happens when you have no running game whatsoever. So he's our first choice. Second one is Austin Eckler, 10 rushes for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 31-10 dismantling the Chargers had over their crosstown rivals or shared stadium rivals, the LA Rams. And then Mike Evans, 10 catches, 207 yards, and 3 touchdowns, obviously the win for the Bucks. So who's getting the game ball this week, Phil?
I'll give it to Mike Evans because that won him the division.
Mike Evans won the division?
I'll give it to him. I mean, that's the biggest win of the week. They
Yeah, and
won the division.
the interesting thing about Mike Evans is I think he had 3 touchdowns on the season, so it's about time.
Yeah, I mean, I could give it. Of course, you can always give something to Tom Brady, right? Like you could always say Tom Brady, but I'll give it to the receiver.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. So fill up your bank account. Last week there were no picks. The week before you went 2-2, 1-0 on your best bets.
Yep.
31-25, 11-5.
Yep.
On the best bets. So here it is, Phil. Last game of the season. You're gonna be picking all the playoff games.
I'll pick the playoffs. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are we going to count those towards your record?
I think we always kind of carve it out separately.
Okay, we'll keep
the regular season is the regular season, the playoffs are the playoffs.
Right. So here it is.
Yep.
You've crushed all the experts out there. Now, can you put an exclamation point on this? What do you got and how many games are you going to pick for us this week?
I'm going to pick 4.
Okay.
And week 18, which is the new last week of the year. Normally it's week 17. Always can be a crazy week because who's resting? This is not a week you want to make a living betting on. This is a week you want to stay away from. So my only advice is if you're going to dabble in the waters of betting, definitely pick the games that matter to both teams.
Yep.
Or at least strongly matter to one if you're going to pick that team. You don't want to be messing around with these games where, like, for instance, the Bucks and Falcons are playing. You don't want to bet that game. The Bucs are resting everyone. The Falcons stink, and the Falcons are 4 points favored because nobody even knows who cares about that game. You don't want to bet that game. So, with that said, I'll jump into the games that I think all matter.
Okay.
Therefore, I feel better at least at picking those. So you got to start with the most obvious game that matters. Saturday night in prime time.
Yep.
The AFC South will be decided, and it'll be decided in Jacksonville. And the Jags are a 6-point favorite, and the Titans are playing with backup situations at quarterback. Here's my only angle on this game. My angle on this game is you got the, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 time in a row division champ, like the top dogs. The Titans have owned that division for several years now, at least 2 or 3, maybe more. And you got the up and coming team with Trevor Lawrence and the newbies that are trying to take it from them.
Yep.
I think they take it from them, but I don't think they take it from them without it being a surprisingly tight contest, because I think this is now the changing of the guard, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I don't think it comes like in a blowout fashion.
Okay.
I think it comes where when you got to dethrone the champ, it's a hard fought game. I think Derrick Henry has a monster game. I think the game ends up being lower scoring. And Doug Peterson's a very good coach for the Jaguars, but Mike Vrabel's also a very good coach.
Yep.
And so this is a good matchup. So I'm going to take the Titans +6.
Nice. Very nice.
First game. Second game, I'm going to go against what my eyes have told me for a while now, because one team really needs the game and one team totally does not need the game. And let me make sure about what I'm saying right now in real time. Okay. Well, one team totally needs the game, but they're likely to, wait a second. In real time, I'm scratching this game off. And I'm going to tell you what game it was going to be. I was going to take the Vikings -7.5 over the Bears.
Yeah.
But the Vikings are now the 3 seed. And they only can move up if the Niners lose. And I don't think the Niners are losing to the Cardinals.
Yep. I'm going to say that's probably a safe bet.
So the Vikings blew being the 1 or 2 seed with their last couple of weeks. So I'm actually going to stay away from it, because if I would be a betting man, I would say that Kirk Cousins is going to get pulled a quarter or 2 into the game, and they're going to be very cautious because they got to play next week. So I'm going to scratch that in real time. So you get to see in real time how my brain works. I'm getting rid of it because I was about to make a miscalculation. Next game, we're going to go with, again, a tried and true blue blood in the NFL. The Steelers, because they play at 1 o'clock, they don't know the fate yet, which I like, because the Steelers have to win this game.
Yep.
The Dolphins play at 1 o'clock. The Bills play at 1 o'clock. So they might be scoreboard watching, but the Steelers are all in. They're not going to rest anyone. They're going to win this game. They're going to beat the Cleveland Browns at home to make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be because somebody else won. It's not going to be because they lost. They're going to handle their business because they're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and damn it, the NFL demands they handle their business because they're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay? -2.5.
-2.5. Okay.
They will handle their business. So then I'm going to then stick with that same train of thought. The Jets will handle their business, which isn't even their business, and that's why they'll handle it, because it's someone else's business. And because it hurts them to win, so they will win, because that's what bad franchises do. They will win. They're -1 point favorite in Miami. I gotta believe they will play a good role of spoiler. Skylar Thompson will have a tough time with the Jets defense. I gotta believe they will score a certain amount of points, probably not a ton. And I also gotta believe Mike White will play better next week than he did.
Yeah.
And it's good weather. I think it's favorable. 70 degrees. I think they'll play a better game, but I'm betting more on the Dolphins with a 3rd-string quarterback. I'm betting against him more than I'm betting for the 5 in a row lost Jets. So I'm going to take the Jets -1. And then I'm going to go with a best bet that's going to be surprising, but I really like the Lions coach. And I think he's going to give Aaron Rodgers trouble in this game. I think the Packers will pull it out, but I do not like the Packers all year as favorites. They have been much better in the underdog role because they're just not that good this year. So, it's cool that they got hot, but even so, they're just not that good. They don't have good receivers. They're just not that good. And I think the Lions have a lot of things that give the Packers trouble, which is why they beat them earlier in the year. They're going to be an issue. The Lions are pretty deep offensively, and they're not going to be easy to deal with. So I think the Packers do, because again, the football gods will ensure the Packers win and make the playoffs. But it might be one of those funky endings where you go, oh my gosh, that's why they lost. They're the Lions. But it's going to be like, 26-24
Yep.
on like, a 56-yard field goal that hit the crossbar and both uprights. But like plus 4.5 seems a bit much. So they're going to be my best bet, because I do think the Lions might actually be the more talented team, but they'll find a way to lose because they're the Lions.
Well, the interesting thing is they're going to kind of have an idea of what's going on as far as what their chances are. Because remember, if Detroit sees that Seattle loses, then
the Lions will know their fate. The Lions will know if they can win and get in. But why I still feel okay with taking the Lions is because normally they're a very bad team.
Yeah.
And if they can pull this game off, they actually finish over 500 and win 9 games. But secondly, it's a division rival, so they will play all out to spoil it no matter what. They won't rest anyone even if they're out of it. They will play hard and play for 4 quarters, and that coach demands that, and they will give a good effort.
Listen, the Detroit is going to be really pumped up. Either they get in the playoffs or they spoil the Packers from getting in. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If Seattle wins, then they can be the spoiler. If Seattle loses, they can get in the playoffs. So either way, they're going to be severely motivated to play a good game. Now, is it going to translate onto the field? I don't know. They're a bad franchise, like you say. But
bad franchises are hard. Listen. It's just when a bad franchise meets a good franchise, it's very rare the bad franchise wins in the NFL. Just look at it. It's just rare.
It's true. Couple last things I want to talk about, and then I'll let you go. One, David Blough. Do you know who he is?
He's the owner. He's the quarterback on the Cardinals.
He's a quarterback in the Cardinals. He was the 64th quarterback to start a game this year. That's ridiculous. That ties the all-time record, and it's going to be broken this week by your man, Mr. Sam Howell, who has gotten okay to start. Yeah.
UNC quarterback. Yeah.
You're a big fan of Sam. Yeah. So
who's he starting for? The Guardians? The Guardians of the Galaxy? The Washington Commanders?
The Washington Redskins, yes.
The Washington Commanderskins?
Yes. So that should be interesting. But the other thing I want to talk about was the big surprise announcement, J.J. Watt retiring. The thing with J.J. Watt is when you look at him, basically he had 4 unbelievable seasons, and then he's been hurt every other year. That's basically what it is. But in those 4 seasons, he had 69 sacks, which is the second highest for a 4-season total behind Reggie White, who had 70. He's got 111.5 sacks, 5-time All-Pro, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, which gets him in right there. He missed at least half a season 4 times. In his first 5 seasons, he had 74.5 sacks. In his last 7, he's had 37. Yeah. So the interesting thing is, you've got the short guy, the guy that's had a short career, but he was the best at his position.
And you get away with that more in the NFL, I feel like, if you can be super dominant.
You can, but then you see, and you compare him to guys like there's a guy like Charlie Joyner, who's a Hall of Famer, right? 19 years, he played 750 receptions, never led the league in anything, 3-time Pro Bowler, played 239 games. So he averaged, what is that? Just over 3 catches a game. Then you've got Art Monk, who caught 940 passes in 224 games. So what is that? Less than 4 passes a game. So these guys were in with no problem as compilers. So you got the compilers on one end.
He's in. Yeah,
then you've got the short. I think he's in too. The question is he a first ballot Hall of Famer, or does he have to wait?
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not because of that. But interestingly, could you imagine 2 things? I'll leave you with this. One, imagine having 112.5 sacks, because I just looked it up. He has 112.5.
Okay.
And not having the most sacks in your family when it's all said and done, because TJ Watt looks like he's going to surpass him with his 77 sacks through 6 seasons. Now, he's been hurt a lot this year, so maybe not, but just the point is, imagine not being able to at least have bragging rights. You have the most sacks in the NFL amongst your siblings. That's pretty crazy.
Well, listen, if nothing else, the reason that I think JJ Watt is great, I don't know if people remember when Hurricane Harvey came by, he actually raised $37 million in 19 days. I mean,
Mm.
wow,
That's
unforgettable,
crazy.
unbelievable.
That's crazy. And then I was going to say the other thing is imagine being Mr. and Mrs. Watt going 200 sacks combined in the NFL between our boys.
we did something right. And actually, doesn't the third brother plays too? Isn't he a fullback?
Probably, but I don't think he plays defense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but still, the three sons in the NFL
But two Hall of Famers,
it's
game wrecking, destroying sack artists.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you can't. I mean, the only people that you can think maybe the Mannings would be above them, but their father was a huge football player also.
Yeah,
so
they're royal. They're even
different.
more royalty, but still, man,
It's impressive.
Never had two brothers wreck quarterbacks like them.
I know. It's impressive. It's impressive. And I want to leave it with this. Rest in peace, Art McNally. I don't know if you know who he is.
Of the McNally family, yeah.
Yes, he is of the McNally family. Yes, he was 97 years old. Last year, he became the first NFL referee to get into the Hall of Fame. So the NFL, they finally did it right, and they actually put somebody in the Hall of Fame before he died.
I like
These guys normally, you look at guys like Cliff Branch, they get nominated after they're deceased. And there's a finalist this year, Ken Riley, that died a couple of years ago. God forbid they put him in the Hall of Fame before he died, but they finally at least got him in. He lived long enough to get into the Hall of Fame. Rest in peace.
Nice.
And hopefully that opens the door for some more referees, because I know in baseball they've got a handful of umpires, and hockey's got some, and even basketball has a few. So it's nice that finally there's a guy from football in there, and he did a lot of great things. And as far as I know, he was still working when he died. So
Jeez.
Just unbelievable career. So rest in peace, Art. Thanks for all your contributions. Phil, my man, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Enjoy the national championship game. Enjoy all your picks. I think you made some great ones this week. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. And hopefully you're listening to this. You're enjoying the podcast. You're enjoying this episode. And you're going to make some money this week off of Phil's picks. He's the only guy, I believe, out there in week 18 that's going 4-0. I'm just going to put it out there. Just saying it. So appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next week. And looking forward to talking about a lot more good things happening. So thanks, everybody.